Hello and welcome to Daily Politics, reaching you from Trust TV here in Abuja. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy, and governance. I am Suleiman Suleiman. Terrorists, also known as bandits, have stepped up attacks in Kaduna in the last 1 week. Yesterday evening, armed bandits attacked a Kaduna-bound train carrying 970 passengers. The train, which left Abuja at about 6 p.m., was attacked between Katari and Regina towns. An unspecified number of passengers were said to have been killed and many injured during the attack. There are also indications that some passengers or some persons on the train have been abducted. The attack on the train came just 2 days after the bandits attacked Kaduna Airport, killing a security guard before soldiers intervened. Some observers have described the attack as an unprecedented act of violence that will heighten concerns about breakdown of security in the country's troubled northern region. Much of northwest and north central Nigeria have been in the grip of attacks by hundreds of bandit groups who have ransacked villages, carried out mass killings, mainly in rural towns and highways. They have also kidnapped thousands of people for ransom, including, of course, students, and have committed other criminal acts, among them stealing and rape. However, bandit attacks on airport and train represent a whole new dimension of worsening security in northern Nigeria, but also in Kaduna in particular. So tonight we're asked, what does it mean for bandits to attack airports and trains? What are the factors fueling the rising incidence of attacks in Kaduna in recent weeks? And what can we all do about it? With me to discuss these issues are Malam Abdulaziz, Deputy General Editor, Daily Trust newspaper. Of course, Malam Abdulaziz, more than anyone else in Nigeria, has reported on the banditry situation in the country. Also with me is Mr. Hassan Adebayo, who is Head of Investigations and also with wide-ranging experience in security and conflict reporting for Premium Times newspaper. You're welcome to Daily Politics.
Thank you for having me.
Mr. Adebayo is unable to join us at this moment, but he's on the way. We're expecting him, and as soon as he does, we'll have him on the discussion. But we'll take a break. When we return, we'll jump right back into it. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is Daily Politics on Trust TV, and we're discussing issues around the attacks on the Kaduna Abuja train last night, but also, of course, the rising security issues around Kaduna in recent months. And with me is one of Nigeria's most, well-known reporters, at least, on this issue. So Malam, each time I'm speaking about this issue with you, it doesn't look to me like I'm speaking with a colleague in the media. It always looks to me like I'm speaking with one of the most informed persons on this particular banditry issue. I don't think there's any other reporter in the country who has reported extensively or traveled extensively or met different kinds of actors on these issues more than yourself. So for me, it's always like I'm talking with an expert in these matters. Now, I think maybe we can look at the immediate concern. What's the point of attacking a train with that many passengers on board? What might the bandits trying to be trying to achieve?
I think, well, first, thank you very much for having me on the show. I think it is the signal, it is the statement. They know very well, whoever it is that orchestrated this attack, that this will grab the attention of the entire country, and that is the target, because it is a dare as I think this afternoon a statement from some Northern Senators Forum was mentioning that it is a dare on the country because it's like it's just like a step up from what they did last year when they attacked the NDA.
Okay.
You know, there was attack on the Nigerian Defense Academy where they abducted some soldiers and killed some people. And so increasingly such attacks are strategic in a way to show like a coming of age kind of effrontery to show that, okay, we have the capacity. If you think trends are things that cannot be attacked, are sophisticated, or they are invincible. Yeah, that's the word I was searching for. If you think that trends are invincible, we can actually even attack the trends. And I think, of course, they tried it the first time. It didn't work as much as it did this time around, which was really fatal because up to this moment, we are still hearing of figures nobody knows, and they abducted so many. This evening, the Kaduna State government released an update statement saying that many people are unaccounted for. So it shows, it's actually the statement. You know, you remember that only a few days earlier, as you said in the in the introduction to the program, there was attack on Kaduna Airport, and you know it's a similar thing. You know, trying to indicate that they have attained some level of sophistication, some level of strength that they can actually do launch more sophisticated attacks beyond the ransacking of villages, what is known, you know, what is mostly known to this conflict.
Thank you. But the attempt to make a statement of this kind by bandits, you know, it's in general among is maybe trying to, you know, like you said, draw attention of the country, the whole country, grab headlines to show that they have arrived at this. But this kind of strategy, this modus, you know,
Operandi.
Thank you, is used mainly by terrorists that actually have a political agenda, by people who have an agenda and they want to announce the agenda. They want to use that strategy to advertise their agenda. But for bandits, you know, most of whom live in rural areas or in the forests surrounding these rural areas, what statement are they trying to use this particular event to make?
Yeah, you know, it's actually, they also have agenda because, yes, they don't have political agenda. That is clear because it's not like there is a territorial agenda or any expansionist agenda. But actually, they are craving for the attention of government. And in many ways, because, you know, a lot of them, as from my own experience, in as much as, you know, a lot of them enjoy the sort of infamy or that comes with this, what they are engaged in, and also maybe the lucrative nature of some of the activities. A lot of them are actually also battle fatigue. You know, these are because they are not driven by ideology or political agenda. It's not a battle that they are all out for, honestly. So therefore, they crave for attention to have some sort of an exit, a closure in which they are not like surrendering, but they are like maybe a win-win kind of situation in which they don't get punished for all the criminal activities they have committed, but then at least they now get peace, because a lot of them are quite constrained by the fact that they can't go anywhere, they can't move, they can't, you know, do anything, and all that. And then, as I said, because the fight, the move itself is not driven by any ideology or political agenda, and therefore there is no that drive, not that motivation. And but they feel the government is underrating them. They feel the government is underrating, and that is why increasingly they have done a number of attacks to show that they have the capacity. Look at all the school abductions are all part of it. Last year, I mean, late in 2019 and 20, I mean, last year, they went to attack early last year, around this time last year also, they went to Sabon Birni and attacked a military a security base and ransacked it, actually abducted some of them, killed many, loot their weapons and all that. They have done a similar thing in Zamfara State. They have come to Kaduna Abuja Road and operated for 4 days consecutively. So all these things are their own attempts, in my reading, to show that you guys underrate us at your own peril, that we have the capacity to bring the country to its knees or to at least...
And without any ideological agenda.
Without any ideological agenda. Because, largely these things are, a lot of people say, oh, the bandits are angry with the government. Why are they attacking the ordinary people or people on the street? Mostly especially these highway abductions and all that, are driven by these two things. The attempt to draw attention to themselves and also the need for them to raise money to fund their activities.
Thank you. So I've just learned that Mr. Adebayo Hassan has arrived, so we'll be taking a short break in order to have him seated in the studio. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Thank you and welcome back. So far we've been discussing around the attacks on the Kaduna Abuja train last night, but also on the wider issues of insecurity, not just in Kaduna State, but also around the Northwest. But with me is Mr. Adebayo Hassan, who we introduced earlier as Head of Investigations of Premium Times newspaper. Like Malam Abdulaziz, Mr. Adebayo has extensive experience of reporting conflict and security in Nigeria. So maybe if we can continue with you. Part of if you look at just before this attack on the Kaduna train yesterday, there was an attack in the airport. Before then, there were attacks in southern Kaduna. Before then, there were attacks around Giwa, and there have been for several. So what kinds of banditry, what kinds of terrorism do we have in Kaduna State specifically? Is it in a class different from Zamfara and Katsina or even Niger states?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think we all have to come to the realization that the country is increasingly sunk in a deepening conflict trap. And this is now appearing in different dimensions. What you have in Zamfara, which, as we have seen, is an offshoot of um, ethnic and resource conflict between the Hausa and the Fulani. Of course, poorly managed, and we have this problem there. And you would say that in the case of Zamfara, you could say, okay, this is what the problem is. Maybe, like, of course, ethnicity, resource issues there. But what we have in Kaduna is pure criminality. Of course, the situation in Zamfara too is pure criminality. Some opportunistic criminals who are hell-bent on bringing down the country, ensuring that nothing works. But I think we have to be careful about saying banditry. The case of Kaduna, that it's clear terrorism. I am not a security person, but I would imagine that the intelligence officials would be working on that theory already. Now, for several years, a Boko Haram splinter group, Ansaru, has been active in this area. And some of us
in Kaduna?
Yes, in Kaduna, they've been active in the area. And we also understand that some of the most audacious attacks Boko Haram carried out in Abuja here, like attack on the United Nations, were actually carried out by the guys that formed the Kaduna wing, the Ansaru, you know. So, and some of us who work in the area of investigative journalism, we also understand that much more than what has ever been reported. These people, the Ansaru, they are delivering devastating attacks, targeting security officials and high-profile individuals. So when they are, when you see attack on train station, you know, not on road now, it's possible that this is actually something being carried out by terrorists, you know, because terrorists, their target is to frighten people, you know, to trust terror in the mind of the people. You know, so when they get audacious and they attack a train station, they are forcing the government to say, okay, we are here and we can do this.
So in other words, they're not, in other words, from what Mala is saying, they're not the bandits that we know, for example, in Zamfara and other places that are, you know, into banditry, but actual terrorists who have a political and ideological agenda.
Possibly.
You know, possibly, and are using this, you know, to announce themselves or to make a statement, as you said earlier. Well, could that be the case?
Well, I like the word possibly that he used, and that is key. And, you know, in by our training as reporters, we always don't conclude until we are sure. But, of course, you know, in Kaduna, there are a number of actors that are operating. A number of actors. Of course, Kaduna is quite different from Zamfara. It's more complicated in the sense that there are a number of actors. One, there are the bandits who we know as maybe the criminal Fulani young people who are committing all manner of crimes. Then we have the Ansaru elements. That is quite true. But then we have other criminals, you know, kidnappers and all that, that are also hibernating around the vast forest in the state. But in a few months ago, like 2 months ago, I was part of a group of 3 that produced a report on, you know, an in-depth scholarly research on the nexus between bandits and these terrorists. And that is very important for us to understand. You know, one thing key is that we have to even understand the geography. Where is who? Because these people have territorial sort of control that maybe this is my area this is yours, even among bandits. So more so between the bandits and these Islamic groups. So, but they also, though our study is almost conclusively established that they are not one and the same, and they don't, it's not always that they don't really work together that much, but there are times that they collaborate. And there are, of course, attempts, because, by their nature, these Islamist groups, they are evangelizing they are evangelizing platforms. So they always try to woo people, including, of course, the bandits, who are now their neighbors. So, and then sometimes they share intelligence, logistics, maybe
as
like
if they were
selling,
security agencies.
exactly, selling arms to each other, or maybe even lending and all that. But they have problem working together, because these ones have a political agenda, a religious one, while these ones are just pure criminals that have their own drives, which are quite different, as I mentioned earlier in the program. So sometimes, because the delineation is not clear, we don't know, and I believe even largely the intelligence services are not quite clear about who operate where. And also because of the mobility. These people, almost all of them use the motorcycles, and they can move in hundreds from point A to B, from one state to another. Like the attacks that had happened about 2 weeks ago in Niger State, devastating attacks. It happened it was carried out by bandits who rode from Zamfara, from the extreme end of Zamfara actually, to go up to Niger to do that. So for people that have that capacity or that ability, it's difficult for you to say whether they are advanced or they are not. And as I said earlier, in as much as yes, Ansaru could do this, the same bandits can actually do that, because they also want to, as I mentioned, draw attention to themselves, to force the government into doing some things with them. But also this issue, this continuous attempt by the Islamist terror group to bring in the bandits into themselves, it's also there. So it's possible it's collaborative. It's also possible that it's one of these groups. When I interviewed the emir of Bungudu, who was in captivity for over a month when he was abducted on the same Kaduna road, he told me that those who did the abduction were Fulani young people, and they had any ideological agenda. But he also confirmed that from their conversation, they were talking about this relationship with the Boko Haram. The Boko Haram is a generic term used just to refer to all the Boko Haram elements in that area who are trying to woo them. And also they were at one point talking about the fight between them, where one of the bandit leaders was killed by the. So it's a very complex crime scene in which generalization or concluding at this level, at this stage, may be dangerous, may be difficult. But the most important thing is that whoever does that, you understand, is someone with a clear agenda to draw serious attention, to show capacity to inflict serious damage, which was what they did.
This takes us to the capacity of the bandits and the capacity of the Nigerian states, in meeting with them, because this is not the first time, like you said earlier, this is not the first time that they have tried to attack the Kaduna Abuja rail. They did it earlier. It wasn't so successful. Now it has been quite a lot more successful. So if terrorists or terror groups try to attack the train only a few months ago without much success, but now they've become quite successful, doesn't that say something about the security architecture around these issues? Doesn't that say something that perhaps since after that nothing has been done to secure the train and the people using it? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. it says something about the capacity of the country's security architecture. And attacks like that are a clear way of testing the capacity of the security and intelligence forces to detect and also prevent. So the problem of capacity is clearly there. But we also have to understand the terrain. I've had the fortune, so to say, of working in some of these rural communities in Kaduna. And when I get to some places, I would ask myself that, okay, if an attack is going on here now, how easy does it become for soldiers to get to this place before crimes are committed? How easy does it become? If very deep areas. Now, these people, they've mastered the terrain. They could use bike, they could go anywhere. It's where they are used to. They could travel from Zamfara to Niger to commit atrocity. They could move from Niger State or even Zamfara and go to Yauri, Zuru side of Kebbi. So it's difficult for the security forces, to get them at this game. So we must understand that. But also, not giving excuse for the security forces. That's their work, and that is why we have intelligence, people who should analyze this situation and raise their mind to respond to this existential challenge that we are faced. But we also must talk about the issue of the political will. I speak several times with people in the security sector and even state level officials who have responsibility for security. They believe that, yes, the challenge is enormous, but it is possible to make progress against these violent criminals, whether kinetic or non-kinetic way. But at the strategic level, there is a dearth of that political will to really combat this issue. A state in the Northwest, has written at least 3 times to Abuja within 1 year that, okay, we want standby force. Not just a situation that there will be an incident, then we'll start making calls, then you deploy troops, then afterwards, we want something like what we have in Borno. Officials there told me that the letter has barely been acknowledged, not even to talk of actually deploying the troops. So that question of political will is there. And until we have that, we may not be able to make any progress against these criminals. And it's just a matter of time that this thing gets out of hand. Last year, I was at the train station in Kaduna, which used to convey a kind of sense of security. Then instead of, so I passed through the NDA road. Then I saw the Afaka school that was attacked by bandits, just 5 minutes drive away from the train station. Sorry, and I was telling the driver that if these guys could be emboldened to attack this school 5 minutes from train station, another 5 minutes to NDA. One day, they would go to train station and start picking people up. If you get to the train station, that's Regasat, how many soldiers do you see there? Do you see any tanks there? Why can we not deploy troops there to protect people when just 5 minutes away, these people attacked facilities like NDA, like Afaka School?
And the question of political will, certainly important, and we'll be going even deeper into that because it's a question that some people have raised many times, sometimes in a bad language, so instead of people focusing attention on it, the issue becomes degraded entirely. But it's a fair question to read, because one would say that since last night, what has actually been the response in terms of boots on the ground? Because even though you said that the terrain is a difficult one, it's still a largely plain terrain. It's not a mountainous region as you have in the world. It's not a swampy region as you have in the Niger Delta, and it's not, but it's largely, so people are taking, what about air surveillance, in terms of chasing even the bandits or trying to recover some of the victims that were abducted, So is it political will or capacity or both?
It is actually both. And for me, actually, I see even the issue of capacity as the major problem.
Okay.
Why I say so is because, this place, actually Nigeria in general, is one very vast land.
Landmass, yes.
So a lot of people don't acknowledge that when we talk about our security. And actually, if you reflect, you see that we are only in the hands of God. Of course, in any case, we are in any kind of situation, but more especially in Nigeria, because honestly, we have no capacity to defend, to ensure peace in this country in terms of law enforcement. Because if you look at it, the vastness of the country vis-a-vis our military strength is uncomparable. You can't compare the two, because in the Nigerian army, if we were to guess, like, how many people would you expect in the Nigerian army? The whole of Nigerian army is just in the region of 300,000 people, or fewer. You understand? And then, so the entire armed forces is around 500,000.
That's probably even a high figure.
Yes, that is like in the entirety.
Yes.
So if
Navy,
you have
Air Force,
yes, Navy, Air Force, and the Army, and that is, as I say, the entirety of it. So among these, there are people, even the brigades of guard protecting the president and the key suit. How many are they? It's a large chunk. People protecting all the generals. How many are they? People doing administrative work. How many are they? People in other corps of the army, like public relations, like finance. These are non-combatant, non-combatant corps. So if you take the census of the entire thing, and even the what do you call it? The police. The police. How many are there? So we have this huge challenge, and then also, if you look at the conflict map of the country, we have conflict almost everywhere. So people are engaged 24/7, trying to contain the Boko Haram in the northeast. In the south, there are the pirates and the bunkers.
Not to interrupt you, isn't that same discussion back to the political will? Because we have large numbers of young people, who are unemployed in the country and who, in fact, do show interest, in joining up into the Nigerian military, So if you have political will, maybe one thing you might want to do is to increase the size of the military. That's one. But also, how does the problem of capacity square up with rising budgets for defense in the country, particularly in the past 15 years or so in Nigeria? So for an investigative reporter, Mr. Hassan, how do we balance the fact that we have lack of capacity? Yes, we can accept that. But how do we balance it with rising budgets, rising monies allocated for security, and yet the same or even worsening performance?
Yeah, thank you very much. Quickly, on the issue of capacity, especially the soft side of it, not talking about just military equipment now and political will. I like what Elijah said the other time, that both are very important, because no country can ensure peace with just having the boots on the ground.
Okay.
Now, anybody that understands how society works and how development happens, how peace happens, if you have peace now in Zamfara or Adamawa, for instance, or Borno State, you should be surprised that how can a place like that have peace? Now, look at the vast number of people left ungoverned, the number of people left excluded, the number of areas where governance is absent. Now, if you and I have issue now, what do? We have discussion. If that doesn't work, we go to police station. We scarcely can fight, you know. But there are places that you don't even have police station at all. You don't have school, you don't have anything. It therefore becomes easy, you know, to get recruits into violence. In any society, you have people with sanguinary soul, people who believe that it's only with violence that they can drive their purpose, whether about economy, whether about religion, whether about politics. But what would determine whether that kind of mindset can, you know, manifest in large-scale violence is the environment, the nature of the society. You know, the kind of thing that you have seen in Zamfara can barely happen in Amak or Broad Street in Lagos because of, you know, the social services there, the quality of the people there. So I just want to make that point about the political. So therefore, as we are talking about military equipment and all that, we must also talk about these soft responses. What opportunities are there for people? How do we ensure that people don't get recruited into this violence? That is very important. We must always stress that in all our discussion. Now, about military budget and military capacity, you know, you have a kind of parallel relationship between that. We also should understand that, unfortunately, problems are turned to opportunities. You know, criminal money-making venture. I recently did some
You're
work.
suggesting that there's corruption
Yes.
in the military in
Yes.
terms of managing budgets?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. I recently did some work around conflict economy, you know, looking at the economic drivers of this conflict in the Lake Chad region. And what you see there, you'll be shocked. Apart from office-based officials, you know, who are making cut from budget and all that, officials on the ground, the people on the ground, what are they doing there? How is it possible to move drugs, to move arms from Nigeria to Cameroon, where you have people at checkpoints in northern Adamawa? How is it possible? It's because of the role that security forces deployed to this place are playing. Why are security forces, why are they farming? You know, thereby abandoning the role they are meant to play. So these are the reasons why we continue to pump money into this into the conflict, into defense, into the security sector. But apart from ceremonies, you know, we've bought this, we've bought that, the impact, which essentially should be peace, is largely there.
Okay.
It's because some people have turned this into, you know, a kind of criminal money-making venture. And
People like
yeah, of course, officials,
military
of course,
officers.
and of course, political officials too. We know that many officials have been tried. You know, it's something that cut across board. And what happens is that it affects the moral, it affects the work ethic of the guys who are actually meant to face these criminals. When do they pay their benefits? The ordinary soldiers who are fighting, when do they pay their benefits? What care exists for their family when they when they die at the war front? So these are the issues. You know, it's a very comprehensive
Thank
issue.
you. But which brings me back to the question of boots on the ground still. You know, that maybe, because you mentioned earlier that there was an attack in Niger State and the terrorists who were responsible for it had from the extreme Zamfara State or extreme Kaduna State, you said?
Extremism.
Extreme Zamfara State, and traveled maybe hundreds or tens of kilometers all the way into parts of Niger State to the question the ordinary person in Niger or anywhere else in Nigeria will be asking is how can terrorists take off in broad daylight or even at night and move hundreds of kilometers, on motorcycles, and they are not noticed by any security agencies in the country, let alone stopped. So isn't that still a question of political will to deal with the situation?
No, I think it's the issue of the capacity again. Because where are the men? How many are they? That is the security men who should be on the roads, who should be in this manning these communities. So I believe, and that is why the two issues I first answer your question as that they are both important because they go hand in hand. Even in the military operation, the political will should be there. Political will in terms of the number, we really desperately need to increase, especially with the conflicts, many conflicts we are confronted with. We need to increase the size of our military seriously, not these 6 months you bring out 200 people. We need serious recruitment drive. Then secondly, is also the equipment. How equipped, how ready are they? A senior security official was almost crying, narrating to me the situation of his men last year. He said that people were deployed to him in one of the northwestern states. And he said, I don't have the vest, the protective vest to give them. I don't have the helmet to give them, the helmet. So if you don't have helmet and protective vest to give to the men that are confronting these mad guys with sophisticated guns, how do we expect them to know? And that is where oftentimes communities accuse the security men wrongly of being in cahoots with the criminals. Because they will say, oh, they withdrew and then they came and attack us. So, there is that instinct, in as much as they sign their death, but, because the situation has to be ideal for them to really give their life to it. Because there is one thing that is doing your job, and another thing being foolhardy. If you know that militarily, capacity-wise, these people have outnumber you. So if you face them, you are only, submitting yourselves to suicide. Just like, for example, when the school abduction at the the Bethel school happened. It's pathetic. The young people that were killed, 2 of them, who were supposed to be guiding the school, the security men. And, these guys came in their tents. They tried to engage them. And of course, expectedly, they finished them off and then, swooped on the student and left with them. It is something that happened in Yauri. So a lot of times, that is why the security agents, sometimes they have no choice, that is those men on the ground, especially because they also harbor that ill feeling about what Hassan was talking about.
But isn't that also still part of the political will issue? Because if the political will is there and, you have budgeted money for security, every year in the past 5 years, security and defense has had the highest budgetary provision in the country, So, and yet people don't have protective vests to even go out as a fighting force. Wouldn't security political will now make you want to find out why, to investigate, and if necessary to, chop off heads of security agencies that are actually involved with this? And I'm asking this because there's been this discussion in the country that the president personally is not so much invested in quelling the issue of banditry in a way that he's invested in the Boko Haram in the northeast, but also especially the issue of IPOB in the southeast. So
yeah, that is actually true, and that's why I say it's intertwined, the capacity, because it's just like the saying that you are as good as your team. or the leader is as good as his team. So it's also vice versa. If the leader is not good or is not giving that push, is not encouraging, is not demonstrating that he cares, then the team cannot be up and doing. Then to the second part of the question, yes, I wrote in my last piece on covering this banditry that when I was traveling to Zamfara in late December last year, I felt I was going into a suicide mission, especially the area I was going to, because of the security propaganda around operations, this and that. And I was expecting that I would see real deployment in terms of military assets and men on the ground. But I saw none of that. And it's still the situation. So honestly, it is true, for whatever reason, this violence, these killings is affecting, and funny enough, in terms of, if we are talking in terms of politics, this is the mainstay of the president's support, the Northwest.
Exactly.
And people have been pauperized, people have been displaced, thousands have been killed. Now I don't even know how that region is going to feed itself next year. Because I know the struggle for people to even pass through this ending year. Now we are going into another farming season, because hundreds of communities, recently at Daily Trust we did a story chronicling the hundreds of communities that have been sacked in Niger, in Katsina, in Zamfara, in Kaduna, communities that cannot go to farm. And these are agrarian communities whose life depends on farming. And that has the consequential effect on food prices in the country. Because you could see how, for example, and one funny thing about this kind of things is the ripple effect. Like, for example, the fact that we could not, communities in Brindungwari, in parts of Katsina, that's Sabua, Funtua, Sandamu, Sabua, Axis, Paskari, and into Zamfara, are communities known for farming, especially maize. And because they could not farm, look at now the chain, the value chain is affected up to the price of egg that you eat. Because now the chicken feed, the price has shot through the roof. A lot of poultry farmers had to close shop. So a lot of this, and that is why security is very key to any development. Because if it is affected, so many other things are affected. Food prices this year, people keep lamenting, but maybe a lot of people, including the government, do not seem to see the roots. And it's because a lot of communities have been sacked. So now I wonder, actually for me, it's still a puzzle. Why, though as much as I said earlier that we have the limitation in terms of the numbers, but why not equipment? We need a more serious, more decisive
political leadership.
Leadership in tackling this problem. And one thing that rings, in fact, this morning when I woke up, that thing came to my mind. One thing that rings in my head again and again was what a contact, a source of mine in Shinkapi in Zamfara State once told me, I think late last year, around October, November, when there was so much problem there, that the government should, whatever the government wants to do, it should be serious about it. Say if they are doing military operations, they should be serious about it. If they are doing a non-kinetic approach, they should be serious about it. That is not military approach. Yes. But sometimes, something will be started a bit, and then they will two step back, and then it will only escalate the problem.
Thank you. So, Mr. Adib, we'll be ending with you because we've just about got to the end of the show now. So, as you know, in this country, when elections are approaching, so many things tend to rise. Ritual killings, at least as reported, or as people have, folk wisdom, right? Issues of insecurity also tend to rise. Even insecurities of the kind that are already existing and long-standing, also tend to increase. So what is the political dimension that you see to the attacks on the trains and the airport in recent weeks, if any?
Yeah, I think the kind of problem with insecurity associated with politics, especially going into an election year, is quite different from what we have now. And it would be unfair, to Nigerian politicians, with all the debt that they carry,
Yes.
to try to associate, this thing with them. Under Goodluck Jonathan, it was common to say, oh, Jonathan was responsible for this. In southern Nigeria, it's common to say Buhari is using his tribes people, his kinsmen to dominate us. And I always ask the question that why would any politician, for what purpose would any politician organize these criminals and say, go and blow up airports, go and
then they will just go like that.
Why? To what? So this is not about the Nigerian politics. If it has relationship with Nigerian politics whatsoever, I think the discussion has to be what do the politicians offering themselves to serve us? What are they bringing? In terms of in terms of solution
ideas
to this,
for solving this.
of solving this. But I think that's the kind of link it has with because we have to have that. That's the biggest challenge we have now. Without resolving these
Because
problems,
they are taking over these problems.
Yeah. So we have to ask the questions about what are they bringing to the table to address this? What understanding do they have, and what solutions are they bringing? I think that's the link we can talk about. Not that they are the cause, they are the ones sponsoring these attacks. To what end? Except there is an evidence.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hassan Adeboye, for coming on the show. Thank you also very much, Abdulaziz, for coming on the show.
Thank you.
And thank you, viewers, for staying with us. It's always interesting having you with us, and it is because you are always here for us. That's why we also try to be here for you. Join us tomorrow when we bring you another edition of Daily Politics on Trust TV. I am Suleiman Suleiman. Bye-bye.